Hey guys, it's Christine. Welcome back to the channel. This week I'm going to be talking about the Odyssey, and I'm mostly going to stick to talking about the movie, but I wanted to mention that I recently reread the Odyssey, and for the first time I read Emily Wilson's translation of it. I had read George Chapman's translation way back. I don't know where my copy is anymore. I read that and the Iliad. And it sucks because I had, matching covers, which I really like, and I don't know where my copy went. I've moved 3 times since reading it originally, so I guess it got lost along the way somewhere, which is sort of fitting. And so I will probably buy Emily Wilson's translation of the Iliad as well, just because I would like to see what she does with it. I really enjoyed her translation. I thought she very consciously makes a decision not to use overly flowery or poetic vocabulary, which I think it goes without saying, it makes it more accessible to a wider audience. So I really enjoyed her translation of it. I have enjoyed a lot of Greek mythology and Norse mythology and just the mythology in general. I've always really loved it. When I was growing up, a movie that me and my brother Steven watched a lot was Clash of the Titans. And I think that really that's where my love of mythology started. Medusa was always so scary in that movie. And she's always been my favorite mythical creature or bad guy or whatever you want to call it. Like, I love Medusa. She is the best. So I was very interested to see what Christopher Nolan would do with it. So I'm familiar with the story of the Odyssey. I also have listened several times to Epic the Musical, which is, if you're into musical theater, you should check it out. It's a musical based on the Odyssey that was created, I think, during COVID. And I know that the guy who wrote it auditioned all of the singers on TikTok. And the album eventually came out, and it came out in parts. It's fantastic. If you are interested in it, and I really enjoy the music in it, I will put a link to sort of the full album with animations down below, and then you can check it out if you want to. One telling of the Odyssey that I sort of dropped the ball, I don't know why I've never seen it, is Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? I've always wanted to see it. It's been on my list of things to see, and I don't know, I never got around to it. So this this new movie coming out has sort of reawakened my interest in seeing that one too. So I'll get around to it hopefully this year. One more quick note before I get to the movie review is I have had Circe on my TBR pile for about a year now, after reading the Song of Achilles. So now that I've seen the Odyssey, I'm very interested in reading this book. I think it's creeping up the in the priorities list for what I read next. So before getting to the review, I want to very quickly address the controversy surrounding the Odyssey, the movie. Or more accurately, what I should say is I want Walton Goggins to address the controversy.
Go outside, nerd. Get out. Go. I ain't got time to be distracted by your worthless chime-ins. Go on.
Okay, so moving on. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I will say, I thought it took a minute to find its rhythm, but once it did, it just didn't stop. It was so well told. The cinematography was second to none. Every frame of that movie looked like a painting. It was just beautiful to look at. I thought the choices for the music was really interesting. I know that Christopher Nolan has said that he wants this story to feel kind of more accessible, more fresh and relatable, and so he made a very conscious decision to not have everybody do, the fake British accents, which I realized wouldn't have been fake for some of the cast. But he went with modern language, like dad instead of father. He went with American accents across the board. I think that was a really smart choice. I think that made it interesting and fresh. And it didn't just fall into another pretentious, historical movie where British accents make as much sense as American accents. Like if you're telling a story about ancient Greece, who cares? Now, I don't want to say too much because, and I realize like the running joke is how do you spoil a story that's 3,000 years old? I get it. Like, you're either familiar with the story or you're not. But I don't want to give away the ending if, people haven't read it or aren't familiar. Like, there's some stories I think we all just kind of know from being in the world without having read them. I don't know that the Odyssey is one of those. It would be for a lot of people. And I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with the idea of he's trying to get home. That's, it's the Matt Damon way. He's lost, he's trying to get home. That's the very simplified version of the story. But what I love about this interpretation is the messaging that underlies all of that. Because, yeah, it's an adventure, but it's also a man coming to terms with what he's done. It has a similarity to Oppenheimer in that way of like, what did I unleash onto the world? Because it flashes back to the sacking of Troy. Now, the sacking of Troy happens in the Iliad. It doesn't really happen in the Odyssey. But Odysseus is the one who came up with the idea of the Trojan horse. And once he sees what the army does when they get into Troy, he just is overcome with horror at what they're doing. I like that he is such a complicated character because he just keeps messing up. And that's true to the story too. Like I'm going to talk about one part. I don't want to ruin things, but I'm going to talk about one part. So if you care about spoilers, I'm going to be talking about the Cyclops scene, okay? So skip ahead if you don't want to hear anything about it. In the story, like one thing that I love about Greek mythology and mythology in general are these sort of trickstery kind of aspects of it, or the way they think around corners. So the men are trapped in a cave with a Cyclops and they can't kill him because they will never be able to move the stone door. So they have to think of how to get out of there without getting eaten, essentially. And in the book, they get him drunk, which I love. I thought that was hilarious, honestly. They get him good and drunk, and then they blind him while he's passed out drunk, and then the next day he opens the door and they tie themselves to the bottom of the sheep that are in the cave with him, and that's how they get out. Now, the crux of that is when they're getting him drunk, the Cyclops Polyphemus asks Odysseus his name, and Odysseus says, "No man." So later on, when he's screaming and yelling because they've just stuck a thing in his eye and blinded him, there are other Cyclops on the island. They're like, "What's going on?" And they said, "Who's hurting you?" And the Cyclops said, "Nobody." And so they're like, "Okay, well then knock it off," and they leave. So I love that kind of trickstery element of it, which was missing in the movie. But in the book, when they get back on the boat, Odysseus cannot help himself. He is just needs Polyphemus to know that it was him. So he says, "My name's Odysseus." Unbeknownst to Odysseus, Polyphemus is Poseidon's son. So then Poseidon spends the rest of the Odyssey trying to get revenge on Odysseus, who is on the sea. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff. Anyway, my point in telling you all of this is that I think I would have really liked it if they had left the no man or nobody aspect of that story in, because it is mirrored so well at the end of the story where without saying too much, Odysseus has to become nobody again. I I love that in the book, and I wish that they had been able to keep that in the movie. But I do also recognize that a book and a movie are very different things. They're very different mediums, and I can't stand it when people expect a movie to be word for word interpreted the same on the page as it is on the screen, because you can't do that. I mean, can you imagine watching Matt Damon tied to a sheep? That would have to be a monstrously huge sheep to, you know, for that scene to play as it does in the book. So you have to like be open to different interpretations. Similarly, the next bad guy that they come across is the Lystragonians, and I know that in the story they are these basically shirtless cannibals standing on the shore throwing rocks at their ships. There are more ships in the book too, and they eat them. So they attack them in the movie. It's not specifically shown that they eat them. Maybe it would have been too similar to the Cyclops, which had just done the same thing, and that scene had just happened. So there's that, like, maybe it just felt a little bit too similar, so that was kind of left out. And again, I don't mind. Like, I am more than happy with certain interpretations being different page to screen. One aspect of the story that I thought was absolutely pitch perfect is the sirens. I loved how that scene was handled, because I was curious, like, what their song would sound like. And I think the way that they did it, again, I'm not going to say too much, but the way that they did it was the only way you could do it. And I just loved it. I thought it was so good. And honestly, Matt Damon's acting in that scene, like, I really hope he gets shown some love at Oscar time. I really do, because he was pulling out all the stops in this movie. I thought the performances by everyone were so, so good, particularly him, particularly Samantha Morton as Cersei, particularly Robert Pattinson as Antinous. He was such a smarmy bastard. Like, everybody in this movie was so, so, so good. A thing that I think you have to kind of make a decision about at the start of making a movie like this is, how much of the magic do you want to include and how much do you want to leave out? Because you want it to feel grounded in reality. So it's gonna make it feel less that way if you have Zeus on a cloud, or if you have Poseidon coming up out of the sea. I feel like the way that they included certain gods made sense, and I can't say too much about it without giving away bigger aspects, but the more I think about it, the more differently I think about Athena's character, and I'm a big fan of Zendaya, and I think she did a great job in this movie. Um, and with and she did it with not that much screen time, but she really makes an impact. And treating them more like the elements than physical representations, I think was really cool. Um, I had my doubts about that at first, because when I heard that Poseidon's not in the movie, like, as a person, I was like, well, how the hell are you going to tell the Odyssey without Poseidon? He's kind of the main bad guy, you know? So I was a little worried about that. But the way that they played it, I just thought it worked so, so well. I just want to, like, one more thing about, like, the realism that I thought brought a real weight to the movie. For example, is when it shows them getting out of the Trojan horse. They've been in there for a few days, just drowning in their own filth, put it that way. And when they get out, the way that Odysseus lands, you can tell his legs are asleep, because he's been crouched inside a wooden horse for God knows how long. He hasn't moved much. And so when they're all, sneaking out of the horse, they're moving kind of weird, like, oh God, my legs. I love that. I thought that was great. Or the final storm, that they face, it happens at night. And I really like that because you don't see the waves coming. You don't see what's going to hit the boat next. And that's how it would have been. Like back then, you wouldn't have had anything to light anything. And so I love Christopher Nolan's decisions to film a movie that way, where you're not seeing a wide shot of this terrible CG storm. Like it's got a certain sense of claustrophobia because you can't see what's coming for you. You just have to hold on and hope to God you make it. I thought it was just so well done, like just really great decisions. I love that he doesn't love CGI. And I don't hate CGI. I don't want to give that impression, but I do think it's relied on way too much. So anywhere that they could use physical effects, in fact, I would say that probably the only thing in the movie that you couldn't do any other way except CG was Scylla. Everything else, I think, was a combination of puppetry, physical effects, forced perspective, and maybe a little CGI to touch it up, but it did not rely on that. And I think that really, again, it just sold the feeling of like, this is really the world, like you're really in it with these characters. There's so many themes in this movie. I love a lot of the imagery. Particularly, I like when we sort of first see Odysseus, because at the beginning of the movie, you don't see his face right away. But when we're first introduced to him and you see his face, he's stringing his bow and he's hunting. He plucks his bow in a way that sort of tells his prey, I'm coming for you now. And when that is played at the end of the movie, again, I wanted to get up out of my chair and just cheer. It was so, like, there's a lot of mirroring. There's a lot of stuff that happens here, and it's shown again here in a different context, but in a really beautifully poetic way. So, yeah, I don't know what else I can say about it. I loved it. I thought it was just so well done, so well acted. It was beautiful to look at. I love this movie. I cannot wait to see it again. It's very much a movie where I feel like I'm going to get way more out of it the second time I see it. Even though I knew the story going in, I feel like now I know the rhythm of it. I think it's going to play even better the second time. And I'm lucky enough to say that I got IMAX tickets. So yeah, that's my review of the Odyssey. I loved it. I just absolutely A+ movie for me. Can't wait to see it again. I think I'll get a lot more out of it the second time. And I can't wait to see it in IMAX. So yeah, like it's a fantastic movie. I think you should all go see it if you haven't already. And yeah, I really, really hope it sees a lot of love, particularly Matt Damon and particularly Samantha Morton. I really hope they see some love at Oscar time. So we'll see what happens. All right, that's it for me this week. Bye.